Been a hell of a week with Charlie Kirk and Jimmy Kimmel, and everyone's trying to equate the two as if they're remotely the same thing. And it's kind of disgusting, man. I'll be honest with you.
I think it's an excellent unintentional troll. And this is what I mean, is it shows how easily the tide is shifted. In 1 week, they went from, yay, Charlie Kirk is dead, to how dare you get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. Hey, that's what you get for saying all sorts of hateful things. You say hateful things, you get killed. Hey, how dare you oppress our guy who's, I mean, he's not saying hateful things because he's saying what I agree with. And even though you think it's hateful, it doesn't matter because you're a MAGA piece of garbage. So your opinion doesn't matter. We're going to start Jimmy Kimmel back so we can continue to celebrate that Charlie Kirk can't come back. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's play devil's advocate for a second. Like, so the real argument when they're talking about free speech, which, as far as I'm concerned, the left wing really doesn't have a leg to stand on with that anymore. They just don't after everything they put us through. But I think the discussion, if they really wanted to have a logical discussion instead of like, oh, well, you're a Trump supporter, so you're an asshole. How do you even have a discussion when that's the attitude? But the real question should be, should the FCC director go on a national program like Benny Johnson and say things like, you know, we could do this the easy way or the hard way. That statement
Mhm.
is not a good statement to hear from a public official, and from a federal official, especially someone at his level. So, if anybody wanted to take it to that discussion, that's a discussion worth having. Is it a direct threat? I could see how that they would um, perceive it as such, though it's not a direct threat in my perspective. If you watch the overall conversation, but that's the soundbite that gets taken. I don't know. What do you think about that?
So, my opinion of the FCC was formed by Howard Stern in the 1980s. All right. I can remember I ordered Howard Stern's dual cassette tape, Crucified by the FCC, and had it mailed to my cousin's house, and my parents didn't know that I was getting Howard Stern stuff, and Crucified by the FCC was hilarious. From a young age, I have been against the Federal Communications Commission preventing people from talking. I think the sweet spot that we had was like in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was like television was the Wild West. We always grew up hearing about how, oh, in Europe, they have naked people doing soap commercials, and of course you're 12 and you're like, that sounds amazing. But
Hey,
I
isn't
don't
that why we
necessarily.
watch Benny Hill?
Yeah, yes, yeah, Benny Hill, where there was a quarter that got dropped down a woman's shirt, and then when it comes out the bottom, it's Benny Hill as George Washington. He's smiling because of the journey he just had. Yeah, Benny Hill. My grandfather, born in 1914, used to love Benny Hill. But anyway, so the thing is that the Federal Communications Commission, or even society allowed it so that in the late 90s, early 2000s, things were pretty lax. And then they started to get tightened up a little bit in the late 2000s. And in 2012, we know what happened there. All of a sudden, the government allows propaganda again, you know.
Yeah.
So it seems to have gone so far the other way that am I okay with the FCC regulation? No, I'm not. And if the FCC truly had a hand in Jimmy Kimmel being fired, then I think he needs to be brought back on the air. That being said, my issue comes into play with everybody who has kept their mouth shut. I got banned off of Twitter. I got banned off of Twitter. I never even tweeted. I started a Twitter account. I started following people and I got suspended. And I didn't get reinstated until Elon Musk bought it. I was never given an explanation. I never had an opportunity.
With no post.
Zero posts,
I didn't
zero
know
posts.
that.
Yeah, so now I was pretty active on Facebook. And then I went to Twitter and I got suspended, and it was just a dead end. I couldn't figure it out. How am I like I don't Elon Musk went, and that's when I went back on it. Since then, it's been wonderful. But the thing is that all the suppression of conservative voices over the years to the point where the president got suspended off of everything. There are guys out there that are canceled. The term deplatform exists so it can be weaponized against conservative voices. And now two left-wing voices get removed and people are outraged.
Right.
If it was the FCC, I agree with that portion of it. But for my opinion, it's a little, hey, look, what goes around comes around. It's called karma.
Well, the difference is their regulations are different. The internet is still, I mean, I wouldn't call it the Wild West anymore, but there's a lot more latitude. Like, for instance, we can do what we're doing right now, and we can post it however we want. But when it comes to broadcasting, they have different rules. That's why the FCC does it have jurisdiction over the internet? I mean, if it does, it's limited. When it comes to broadcast, they're subsidized by federal tax dollars. So that alone means we have to have some government regulation in some fashion or another. So the real question, and this is the tough question, if you really want to get into it, Jimmy Kimmel was spewing lies. As far as I'm concerned, that was enough. I mean, we're all sick of hearing lies. He went on television, and even though the press conference from the police and the FBI had already happened, and they had stated definitively that they believe that the shooter was motivated by left-wing ideology, he went on TV that night, hours after the press conference, and said, we're trying to act like as if this guy wasn't one of our own, meaning he was MAGA. Flat out lies, which raises the temperature even further. It upset me. It upset regular people that watch TV or appreciated Charlie Kirk. So free speech is important. Government subsidized free speech. You know what I mean? So what's the answer? How do we cause people to speak truth, especially if they have something as influential as, say, Kimmel? He reaches people, not a lot. His last ratings were like 129,000. That is pathetic for that demo. Fine, but he's 129,000 people is still a lot of people to reach their ears. So, well, how do we encourage proper speech? And not proper speech is a bad word. How do we encourage truthful speech without being censorship mongers? Because nobody wants censorship.
So let me ask you a different question. I got accused online this week of my argument tactic is answering questions with questions. And I was like, good job. But that is one of my tactics for sure. But anyway, so here's my question is that instead of focusing all of our attention on censorship and how terrible censorship is and how we can prevent censorship from happening, because none of that is real. None of that is real. Let's ask this question. How is it that Jimmy Kimmel was able to stay on ABC when he had 100,000 viewers? They need to make money somehow. Where is that money coming from? Who was supplying the money to keep that show on the air? And if they were supplying the money, do you think they were supplying the money and saying, hey, go ahead and say whatever you want? Or were they supplying the money and saying, hey, this is what you're going to post on your thing, to the point where Jimmy Kimmel was saying, remember what Jimmy Kimmel said, if you're unvaccinated, you don't deserve a hospital bed. That's what Jimmy Kimmel said. If you're unvaccinated, you do not deserve a hospital bed. So that was allowed on those airways. And yes, you should be allowed to say that. But the thing is that when the market decides not to listen to that anymore, the market should be able to dictate that he leave. When the market dictates that he leaves by only having 100,000 viewers on a Disney-owned network in not prime time, but late night, the funding has to come from somewhere. And why has everybody just let that happen so that the consistency amongst the messaging has been the same? The market didn't want it, but they continued to put it out there. That's my question.
Well, you're talking about two different things, kind of. So you're talking about, so where does the money come to fund this? And so you should be able to say it, whatever they want to say. You're 100% right.
Absolutely, 100%. I used to defend the Westboro Baptist Church. Remember those guys? They were the guys who, forgive me, they were the ones who said God hates facts. And they were a church, and every time something awful would happen, there would be something terrible where the whole United States would be rallied because it's unfortunate because this tragedy happened. They would use that opportunity to say, this happened because God hates you because of X, Y, and Z. And they were awful, far right-wing people that were absolutely, completely, and utterly disgusting, and I hated them, and I defended their right to say what they said.
Right. But I would say, so on one hand, ABC was clearly losing money on Kimmel, and you pointed it out wisely. The most likely scenario is not the FCC, not even so much what he said, is like they're losing money and they needed an excuse. So that technically violated their ethics code, giving them the go-ahead to get rid of him. So there's one piece. The other piece, are you suggesting that the show is 100% brought to them by Pfizer? Like, and that's the money you're referring to?
Yeah, I don't know that it's 100% by Pfizer. I
Well,
would
or it's
start to
something of the
believe.
sort.
Right. Point is that it's coming from money that has one ideology, you know? Let me ask you a question. Is him saying that Charlie Kirk's murderer was a MAGA fan really that terrible? Like, was it really, is that worse than saying unvaccinated people shouldn't get hospital beds and they should die? I would argue that that's worse.
No
What
way.
I'm saying is that Charlie Kirk and his statement about Charlie Kirk was a catalyst to move on because there's a changing tide in society, and the Jimmy Kimmels and the Stephen Colberts. If you look at Jimmy Fallon had a pretty funny monologue where
I
he
saw the
said that
clip.
he did you see where he's trying to share his opinion of Trump, and it got, you know. But anyway,
You
point
know,
is,
comedy.
Jimmy Fallon is running scared too because he knows he's gonna get fired. Jimmy Fallon has enough talent that if he goes back to what he used to do, he should be fine. But if he continues this messaging, he's probably gonna get booted too because that's not what people want anymore.
No, I agree 100%. Which brings me back to your earlier statement that we're probably looking for an excuse anyway, and that's why they did it.
Yep,
All right.
absolutely.